Hello, and welcome back to the Outdoor Minimalist podcast. I'm your host, Meg Carney, an outdoor and environmental writer and author of the book Outdoor Minimalist: Wasteless Hiking, Camping, and Backpacking. The Outdoor Minimalist podcast has a goal to give listeners actionable ways to waste less hiking, camping, backpacking, and more during every step of their process. Your impact outdoors starts long before you hit the trail and goes beyond leave no trace ethics. You'll learn how to identify sustainable outdoor brands, how to ask hard questions regarding sustainability, and begin to shift and evolve your mindset to integrate minimalism into all of your outdoor pursuits. In episode 77 of the Outdoor Minimalist podcast, we are talking about eco-anxiety. And if you're someone that experiences anxiety on a regular basis, like me, then you may relate to this episode quite a lot. And while anxiety in general can come from a variety of places and manifest in different ways for different people, eco-anxiety specifically is defined as extreme worry about current and future harm to the environment caused by human activity and climate change. On the surface, this doesn't seem like it would necessarily be a bad thing to care about the environment and our human impact on the planet, but when it begins to consume your life and influences your daily decisions to a level that is now unsustainable emotionally for you, then eco-anxiety may be taking over. Now, I'm not a psychologist, and neither is my guest. However, we both are individuals that have experienced eco-anxiety and adopted different ways to manage it in our daily lives. Because we have this shared firsthand experience, we felt comfortable diving into this topic and sharing how it has impacted our lives. The information shared is not meant to diagnose or eliminate anxiety for any listeners, but we do hope it helps others feel less alone and a little bit more understood on a level within our community, and to know that there are others that share your inner experiences and can empathize. If you are struggling with anxiety and other mental health concerns, we recommend seeking guidance from a therapist or other mental health professionals. Resources for that are shared at the end of this episode and in the show notes. With that, I'd like to introduce today's guest, Margo Stoney. Margo is a Montana-based graphic designer and runs a design studio called High Mountain Creative. She helps conservation nonprofits and sustainable-minded brands increase their impact through visual storytelling. She's a small business member of the Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics and is a proud participant of the Adopt a Highway litter pickup program in Montana. She's collaborated with nonprofits like the Nature Conservancy, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and the National Forest Foundation. Adventuring plans on your calendar? Remember to grab your Lava Linens travel towel on your way out the door. Founded by a mother-daughter team, Lava Linens crafts durable, luxurious travel towels as a more sustainable and better performing alternative to microfiber and cotton towels. Powered by flax and hemp, they're designed to be by your side for years to come. Use the code Outdoor Minimalist for 15% off your next order. Thanks for joining me on the show today, Margo. I have been looking forward to our conversation because anxiety is definitely a big part of my life. So it'll be a great, a great learning point, and maybe we'll be able to connect on a couple different levels. So before we get to all of that, I also would love to know just a little bit more about your background and how you got involved and integrated into outdoor sports and recreation in general.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So I started snowboarding. I learned how to snowboard when I was 11 years old, and I don't know why, but snowboarding was kind of the first time in my life that I felt like I had found my calling. I had been in Girl Scouts and played softball and everything, as a kid, but for some reason when I found snowboarding, that it just kind of felt like my place, and I knew that I like loved the lifestyle idea of it. That was back in like 1996. I remember watching, like old Wildcat snowboard movies. And I grew up in Michigan. The snowboarding there was not glamorous. My ski hill had 250 vertical feet. But that was kind of how I, basically built my career around snowboarding. When I got into high school later, I learned about graphic design, and I knew immediately when I learned how to use Photoshop, I knew immediately that I wanted to design snowboards for a living. And that was how I was going to kind of marry together like this passion of snowboarding and having a career. I still to this day have not designed a snowboard, but I have designed skis, but I have been, taken other avenues within the outdoor industry and that have all kind of been in the root of snowboarding in the outdoors and spending time in nature and outside.
Awesome. So I'm going to assume that you still snowboard to this day. Is that like your main outdoor activity that you like to do, or do you also participate in other sports?
Definitely still snowboard, and I've diversified quite a bit. Now I'm trying to get into split-boarding, and I do some cross-country skiing in the winter. And then, yeah, I love hiking. I call myself a soft core hiker. I'm kind of, my ideal day is like a 5 to 7 mile hike with like a lot of birds and like snacks and a good picnic break in the between. I love bird watching, fly fishing in the summer, and really just, I don't know, to me, recreation is just being outside and kind of resetting. So yeah, definitely still a snowboarder at heart though.
That's awesome. Did you move somewhere that had better snowboarding than Michigan then?
Immediately. Yeah, I graduated from college in 2007, and about a week after graduation, I bought a four-wheel drive car and moved out to Colorado and spent 2 years living in Vail, Colorado. I kind of got the dream job right out of college. I was working designing ads at a newspaper second shift. And so I didn't go to work until 3 p.m. And so I got to be a ski bum during the day and have like a real job doing what I went to school for at night. And then eventually moved to Lake Tahoe, where I got more into doing ski resort marketing and really started to feel like get more connected with the outdoors and understanding forests and public land and things like that, because Tahoe is just so surrounded and, you know, thriving in all of that. So yeah.
Yeah, I've heard really great things about that area, but I have never been there. I feel like it would be a great place to visit for sure.
Yeah, not right now. It's very snowy there right now.
Yeah, I have seen some pictures of people that live there, and it did seem like they're getting a lot of snow right now. So since you were kind of talking about that transition into like different areas of graphic design and kind of your background with snowboarding, how did that all work? Was it like a pretty natural progression into entering the outdoor industry, or when you went to university, did you know that that was kind of like your end goal?
Yeah, when I was in school, my end goal, all of my school projects and portfolio projects always had something to do with snowboarding. And, I would design fake catalogs and I did an internship. My first internship was at Never Summer Snowboards in Denver, and that was just like a dream for me as like a little 19-year-old. So yeah, that was kind of my focus just from day one of doing graphic design, and it's definitely changed over the years as far as my priorities, and um, I can get into but I can get into the pivot if you want of like how I pivoted into doing more sustainable stuff, but I didn't know if you want to save that for later.
Yeah, you can go ahead and add it now if you feel like it fits.
Okay. Well, no, sorry. Let's save
Okay.
that, and then you can, when we go into like the eco anxiety, I can kind of say about how that drove my career. So yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So mm, yes, now I'm trying to think. Okay. So it does feel kind of like it was like naturally that's what you were going to pursue to begin with. But since we're talking about eco anxiety specifically today, then we should also discuss how and if that played a role in your general career trajectory or where you kind of have ended up in life.
Yeah, absolutely. The outdoor industry, when I was first going to school, or when I was, learned about snowboarding when I was 11, outdoor industry wasn't something that was on my radar or that I knew about. And it wasn't until, I was living out west, and I learned about, the snow sports industries of America trade show, the SIA trade show, and Outdoor Retailer, that I realized that there was this whole like big industry around it, which made me love it even more. So I sort of, ran the gamut on doing some, in-house jobs and working primarily in-house as a graphic designer and marketer at a ski resort in Lake Tahoe. And I'm kind of one of those people that every like 4 or 5 years I need to have a massive change in my life, or else I get really bored and antsy. And so after about 5 years in Lake Tahoe, I kind of got this itch, and I knew I needed something new. And so I left my job in Lake Tahoe, and I moved, like every good millennial, I moved home to my parents' house and started to run my business full time. That was 2014. I went full time working with High Mountain Creative. And my goal when I first started doing that was to be able to work for myself from anywhere, so that I could basically travel and snowboard around the world, which I did get to do. And I felt like the more that I traveled, the more connected I felt to just different cultures and to the earth itself, just knowing that there was, just a big place out there. And somewhere in all of that, probably between travel and just sort of, getting older and wiser, I started to sort of have that, like, there's got to be more than this feeling with my career. And I kind of started getting, this is when the eco anxiety kind of started to set in. I started feeling that, climate change and the news about the environment it was something I couldn't ignore anymore. And um, I knew that there was like something that I had to do with my career to change that. And I originally thought I wanted to go back to school. I was gonna go and get, a master's in something, or start over and learn wildlife biology, or become a researcher to find, the next, I don't know, alternative energy solution or something. Like, I felt like I had to make this big pivot in order to make a mark in the world and to like really contribute towards climate solutions. And then around 2015, I started doing work with a nonprofit called American Rivers. They do advocacy work for clean rivers around the United States. And it didn't occur to me right away when I started working with them, but it eventually dawned on me that this could be my thing, that I could be a graphic designer that's working with these people on the front lines of climate change and conservation. And I could be the person that is helping spread the message, that's helping, use graphics and visuals and reports and things like that to get some of these, complex ideas about climate change and science and these important issues out in front of the world in a way that was accessible and that could be understood by the general population.
That's really awesome. I feel like I identify a lot with that journey. um, but it makes a lot of sense, because I think a lot of times we kind of like, we feel like we should be doing more, or like adding to the things, like we need to be different or like know more things in order to actually make a change, when a lot of times I feel like we already have the skills to kind of implement that. And that's kind of what I was hearing from you, is you just kind of had to like harness the powers you already had and
Yeah.
apply them in a new way.
Yes, there was a lot of learn as you go. And I will say that the fact that I don't know anything about, well, I won't say don't know anything, because obviously I've learned a lot over the years, but the fact that I am not a scientist and that I'm not so deep in, a cause or a certain nonprofit, that my outside view and my outside perspective on some of these issues, or how to explain a certain cause or issue to the public, like, it's kind of a benefit that I don't know that much, because I can say, they can come to me and like talk about some complex problem with carbon they can come to me with some kind of problem about carbon credits or something with climate change or like habitats and this and that. And I can say, I don't know what you're talking about. That makes no sense to me. And you want the general population to support your cause based on like this messaging, like, let me help you with that. Let's distill that down. Let's, create a visual that explains like why that's happening and what you can do to fix it. And so I think in a way, my ignorance or just kind of high level knowledge of some of these issues has really acted as a benefit in my business and with what I'm doing.
Absolutely. Kind of like a translator. You can communicate in a different way so we can
Yes.
understand what people are saying. I love that. So I don't necessarily want to backtrack, but I feel like we kind of have to in order to explain the larger topic of the episode. So I want to break down what exactly eco-anxiety is. I'm sure some listeners have heard of it and it has been like talked about through the climate change discussions in media and stuff. But yeah, let's just kind of break it down.
Sure. And I think you could probably ask 10 different people and get 10 different explanations of what eco anxiety is. But my explanation is that eco anxiety is anxiety that's triggered by climate change or environmental issues. A lot of times, well, I know for me at least, it can come across as kind of feeling like an existential crisis or sort of this doom and gloom. Um, and then I kind of have found that a lot of the factors that tie in to eco anxiety, one of them is fear, kind of, what will the planet look like in 30 years? Will there be clean air and water for us? Will there be enough food? What will the planet look like for our children or future generations? And also, future generations of wildlife and things like that. So there's kind of like this fear and this unknown of, what, stuff like weird stuff is happening right now. Like, how weird is it going to get in our lifetime? On top of that, I'm just going to rattle off all of the scary things and that maybe will help break down the eco anxiety. Then there's hopelessness, which this one I know is not super exciting, but it's kind of like we don't have control over what's happening. We don't have control over reversing climate change or stopping climate change. We're just kind of like one person in this big equation. And until like the whole system changes, like, we're all kind of like standing here with our hands at our side. Like, I don't know what to do. And the feeling that the earth is being used up at an alarming rate, no matter how many electric cars we make or how many pounds of plastic we clean up from the ocean, it'll never be enough. So that's kind of the hopelessness aspect of it. I've also been exploring the grief aspect of eco anxiety. This is sort of even more depressing than the last one, but mourning the loss of a healthy planet and the ecosystems and wildlife. And I mean, there's communities and entire countries that have been victims of climate injustice and everything that's going on with climate change. And one that's, I think, big for me, and maybe this is what a lot of people feel that they can identify, and it's the eco guilt. And to me, eco guilt, if you think about if you're on a fad diet and they want you to count calories of everything that you eat, and, I ate 5 almonds and that was, 20 calories. And to me, eco guilt is kind of like counting your carbon footprint or your environmental impact with everything that you do every day. And it can cause sort of an analysis paralysis feeling around making everyday decisions based on how it'll affect your carbon footprint. So like avoiding things that you want to do on a daily basis because its potential impact on the environment. So, whether you drive or walk somewhere or, even the food you buy, like if you really want to buy some strawberries that day, but you're like, oh my gosh, but they come in this plastic and the strawberries aren't in season in the US right now. And so they're from Mexico, and the carbon footprint of the strawberry, like being brought here, and just kind of the, like losing all the joy in life because like we're too busy thinking about, the big scale impact of these little decisions, the clothes we buy, traveling, like I still love traveling. I know flying in an airplane is the worst thing you can do for the planet, I'm sure, but there's just some things that you have to, look at and realize that it's maybe not worth the eco guilt and the eco anxiety. So those were kind of some of the the way that I've broken down my eco anxiety, and you know, I've obviously spent a lot of time analyzing myself and my feelings around it. I hope that
Yeah.
wasn't too much.
No, that was perfect. That was great. I am curious. Do you think that it probably impacts people in different ways and to different degrees, or like even different demographics potentially could have more eco anxiety than other people?
Demographics for sure. I was having a conversation earlier today. One of my clients here in Missoula, they focus on zero waste and kind of like recycling and upcycling solutions in the community. And one of their programs is with fifth graders, and they were saying but the younger generations are feeling even a little bit more in despair because they're so young and they still have so much of their life, whereas boomers or some people who are maybe only going to be on the earth for like 15 or 20 more years, maybe they're not as worried about what's going to be happening. So I think like generation definitely has something to do with it, where maybe they're not as concerned about clean air, or they don't care about all of the plastic that's everywhere because it's like, well, you know, we're not going to be here. So I think generations, and then um, other demographics. I mean, I'm sure depending on where people live that are more exposed to certain environmental factors, like I'm not a super good expert on climate injustice, but I know there are countries that basically we sell our trash to, and those countries, they're not the ones that are producing billions of pounds of plastic a year, but their beaches are covered in it and their land is covered in it because we don't have anywhere to put it from the United States.
Yeah, so maybe more along the lines of people who have like kind of like a direct impact. So like if you're further removed, like you're saying generationally or even like environmentally, like you're not seeing the problem every day or like thinking about your future in a larger sense, then the anxiety is likely to be lower. Because yeah, maybe you just don't care because it's not a part of your life.
I think that there's a lot of people that probably still think that way, and that's kind of, we have to win those people over.
Absolutely. So, okay, so we'll focus on the people that are thinking about these things then, because I'm guessing most of the people that listen to this podcast care about it. So, are there ways that you think that that type of anxiety influences our day-to-day decisions, or even like bigger decisions, like where we live, the jobs that we work, and just kind of like how we live our lives?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. If you think about where you live, uh, my husband and I have been looking to buy a house for the last several years, and for obvious reasons, that has not been working out. But it's kind of the battle between living in the city and living in the country. If you live in the city, it's really easy. I can walk everywhere. I can ride my bike. It's really easy to, run errands without having to use a car. We have, access to services and things that we need. And if you live in the country, there's benefits like having more space, maybe to have a garden, and um, you know, but you have to consider, oh, sorry, that one didn't go well. Um, I'm gonna start over. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
Um, okay, how does it influence our everyday decisions or lifestyle choices? Um,
Mhm.
so I think for a lot of us younger generations, I'm not super young. I'm almost 40, but I will say, like, in my generation, I feel like there's a lot of us that are considering different places to live based on, do I want to live in the city and have access to services and public transit and not need to have a car all the time, or weighing the options of living in the country and maybe having space to grow a garden and produce some of your own food. And, I don't want to say like homesteading, but kind of having more of that mindset. Like there's pros and cons to all of these different lifestyle choices. And I think every day, just, I touched a little bit on buying food before, and that's kind of a big thing that is difficult, just making decisions about, where your food comes from and what it's packaged in. Even things like recreation, which I know everybody has, our stuff that we love to do, but thinking about the overuse of trails, there's some trails here in Missoula that I really love, but they just get, so heavily used, and there's dog poo and trash and everything everywhere. And I just feel that gives me eco anxiety, because I'm like part of the problem, but I'm also, like, should I come out here and clean all of this up? And then, along those lines, the gear that we use, I'm a snowboarder, and I have, two different kinds of snowboards and cross-country skis and snowshoes, and, a bike for cruising the trails, and a bike that's got, mountain bike tires on it. And so there's just, we're also like very us outdoors folks, there's also the gear aspect of it. And, where does our gear come from, and where does it go when we're done using it? Where do the materials come from to make this gear, and who makes it, and how much are they getting paid? There's just, you can really go down a rabbit hole of, just these everyday decisions. And we have to keep it in check and make sure that we're still finding joy in our lives, and we're still doing the things that we love, without letting eco anxiety take over too much.
Yeah, so how would you say that you have been able to manage that without it taking over kind of like your daily thought processes?
Well, I'll say that it had to get worse before it got better. I really was in a dark place for a couple of years, just feeling like it was consuming my everyday life and a lot of my decisions. And I think that the things that have helped me the most is, first of all, talking about it. Maybe 15 years ago, if you told somebody that you were losing sleep at night because of climate change or plastic on the beach, they might be like, ha ha ha. And now you bring that up to somebody, especially somebody with children, or somebody who, it has like the same fears and everyday anxieties. It's really helpful to talk about it with other people. And, maybe those people aren't in your circle of friends, but maybe they are, but there's good places that you can find that network. And I found, if you have some local nonprofits or groups that, are doing things like picking up trash, or a couple of weeks ago, I went to my first public lands rally, and I just met some really cool folks there and felt like I was part of something, and that I wasn't the only person that felt this way. And so like finding a network and talking to other people about it, and then focusing on the good news and some of the positive things that are happening and climate solutions. I recently started, every Monday on LinkedIn, I would post an article about climate change. And a lot of it was, this bat is now like added to the endangered species list, or they found this much plastic, on this island in the Pacific. And I just kind of felt like that was not helping. And so I decided to change my perspective and only post good news. And it's been a lot more fun. And just it's helped me see some of the creative things and solutions that, nonprofits and individuals and even, big brands and corporations are coming up with to find climate solutions. And it's a lot more uplifting than focusing on the bad news. And then I'll say, if there's one thing that anybody takes away from this podcast episode, I'll say don't be a perfectionist, and just try and find a balance, and make sure that worrying about climate change and the environment and wildlife isn't just sucking you dry and ruining your life, because there's only so much that an individual person can do, and there's only so much on a daily basis, so many decisions that you can make that are going to make a difference. And we still have to live our lives, and just find the things that are easy for you to focus on, whether it's reusable grocery bags or, you know, carpooling to the ski hill. Just, you know, find your couple of things that you're really good at, and that's manageable to you, and just go with it and be proud, and don't let the little stuff bog you down.
Absolutely. I'd say that's an easy way to kind of get burnt out too. If it's something that you really care about, you'll get really overwhelmed and kind of burn out and just kind of avoid the topic altogether. So, I like your approach. That's good. So what are some resources that you could recommend to listeners if they're interested in learning more about eco-anxiety, or if they want more tools to help manage it?
Yeah, I thought about this one. I don't have anything like super specific and good, but I'll throw out a couple of things.
Okay.
So if you um so NPR Climate actually has some pretty regularly published resources about climate change and dealing with the emotional factors around it. They've got some fun resources on their podcast Life Kit. And so every once in a while, I'll see some cool things pop up on there. A couple weeks ago, they did a comic strip to help kids deal with climate anxiety, and I thought that was really neat. And you know, a good resource for parents and teachers and things like that that might not know how to discuss that with their children. Honestly, this is a really obvious one, but seeing a therapist, that's something that, you know, helped me, just having somebody to talk about, even if they didn't feel the same way necessarily. It was just kind of nice to get it off my chest. And so if that's something that's accessible to you, it was really helpful for me, especially because I had gotten kind of a little too far down the eco anxiety trail. And then kind of like I mentioned before, just finding local resources for things on the ground, you know, planting trees, trash cleanup days, you know, volunteering with kids to teach them about ecosystems or environments, or, you know, just little things like that where you can go be with your people and go be with other folks they're doing good, and you feel like you're banding together to fight this. So and then if you do show notes, I can send some links to some of the NPR stuff, but I don't know if you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
People can just find it.
Yeah, people can look it up, but I usually try to share resources directly in the show notes. So if you could send that to me, that'd be great.
Yeah, okay. I'll put a couple of them together and send them over.
Awesome. And how can listeners learn more about you and your work?
Yes. My website is hightmountaincreative.com. And if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn and hear some good news Monday every week, I'm at linkedin.com/mstoney. I'm also on Instagram, and I do have a Facebook business page. So if you want to talk eco-anxiety or talk about something a little bit more lighthearted, I'm around for that too. So thank you.
Awesome. I'll be sure to also share links to that in the show notes in case people do want to connect with you. But with that, I'm really glad that you had time to come onto the show and talk about this topic, because I think it's really important and a lot of people struggle with it. So
yeah, thanks. It feels kind of good. Like, well, I'm probably a little tensed up, but it feels good to kind of talk about it. And if you would have asked me like 2 years ago, I probably would have been like, or it's just like I was just in a weird place for a while with it, like just like total existential crisis. Like, what's the point of waking up in the morning? And so, like, it feels good to be on the other side of it. I don't know if it's like for good, but hopefully for now it's helpful, but yeah, and hopefully it helps other people just hearing maybe some other feelings validated or feelings like said out loud. So yeah, thank you for like coming up with that topic and making it something that, will hopefully help people.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you hear, let me know. Leave a review and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find us on Instagram at outdoor.minimalist.book or subscribe to our weekly newsletter at theoutdoorminimalist.com for even more updates, educational resources, and to help build an outdoor community with the shared goal to create a better outdoor space as we recreate.